So I'm Alicia Culver. I'm the executive director of the Responsible Purchasing Network. We're a nonprofit environmental consulting firm, and we work a lot with state governments and some local governments, some of which are on here. And we try to share best practices, and we work soup to nuts on various different specifications, program development for green and sustainable purchasing. And we'll talk a little bit about the work that we did on this project under funding from NASPO. Actually, I'm going to give a shout out to my person who's not on this call, Kelly Pansiera. She did a lot of the market assessments and benchmarking assessments for this. And we also enjoy collaborating with other NGOs. So we drew from obviously work from other NGOs like CEH, et cetera. So glad to see you all on here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I am so thrilled to always be working with Alicia. I just to let you guys know, I call her my EPP therapist. Okay. So, but we've been working together for over 10 years on multiple different projects. And this is one that I really like to work on because it's very specific. There's a lot of thinking, but it comes out with this product, which are the specifications. So I'm going to talk about the specs that we had. It is a statewide contract for floor covering, so it covers carpet and flooring, but we're just going to focus on the flooring piece of this on this call, just because we just sort of don't have enough time to get into both, and we wanted to be able to dive into flooring. So I'll cover sort of what our specs are. Alicia's going to talk about the technical support that she provided us and kind of walk through the third-party certifications and standards. I just wanted to talk a little bit about NASPO funding, and then we wanted to open it up for discussion and to discuss, PVC. CEH did a wonderful couple of, and Jose, thank you so much, of webinars on, alternatives and also sort of issues with PVC in flooring. And, this came up in our bid, and I will talk a little bit about what happened and what the solution was in the bid. We want to talk a little bit also, if there's time, about disclosure versus requirements, right? You can do one or the other, or you could do both, and we ended up doing both. And then another thing that came up is just about health product declarations and environmental product declarations, and sort of how do you use them, right? Like, we want to know, how do you guys use them as a state or a county or a community procurement person? Like, how are you using them, right? Okay. So you guys will get a copy of this presentation, but you can link here to our mandatory specifications and desirable criteria for carpet, flooring, adhesives, and carpet cushioning. And once again, we're just going to talk about flooring on this part. So when you open the specs, we actually decided to put this table in here, and thank you, Jose, for sort of showing us this table. And this inspiration came from the Parsons School of Design, their Healthy Materials Lab. And what we decided to do is put right in the technical specifications, right at the beginning, the floor covering types that are sort of out there. It may not be every single one. And then sort of what we're thinking about, whether it's preferred, acceptable, avoids, or excludes as described in this document. And so you can see there are a bunch that are, preferred and acceptable. And then there are some that we're saying, you know what, you got to exclude them because they don't meet the specs, or there are some particular requirements on them that are in our specs, like with vinyl flooring. Okay, so very quickly, this is what we decided. Mandatory specs has to have an EPD or an HPD, all right? Has to be free of tire-derived rubber, coal fly ash, latex, bitumen. Is that how you say it? Bitumen?
Bitumen, bitumen.
Okay, resin, and then also PVC. Um, must not have intentionally added PFAS, flame retardants, or antimicrobials, and must not have a Proposition 65 warning. Now, there is a little asterisk there on the PVC, and you can see we have some language here. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, like what we decided going forward. Then we also have required disclosures, and this is really targeted at the buyers, right? How do we give buyers the right information so that they can make an educated decision on what it is they want to purchase? So we have in the price files specific disclosures by either item or line, so that our buyers can find the formaldehyde-free or those with FSC or other third-party certification standards. We also have the primary material to facilitate recycling and whether or not flooring is luxury vinyl tile. All right. So we just want to have some type of disclosure to give the buyer a little more um, the ability to have choices. And this is one big thing that I've found in a lot of work that I've done is that that's not out there, you know. And some of the issues are whether the vendors can actually give you the correct information. But it's a first step, right? And then we have desirable formaldehyde-free, also has some type of sustainable forest management certification, and having post-consumer recycled content. Now, the certifications and standards that we decided to include is that it had to meet one of these, either one of the multi-attribute certifications or one of the single attribute certifications. Alicia's actually going to dive into each of these, so I'm going to kind of move on. We can get to that part. And then just on the polyvinyl chloride, this was a very interesting discussion. We do a few $1 million in sales on our contracts. When we looked at the sales, I think it might have been almost 3 million. I think it was definitely $2 million in sales on vinyl and a luxury vinyl tile. So we had a lot of discussions about vinyl, but unfortunately we didn't have enough time to make a real decision on whether to ban it. So we recognized that we needed more time to talk to lots of folks. Of course, we heard loud and clear from the industry that they didn't want us to ban it. They said that it was the most cost-effective option, especially for schools, right? So part of my job is to try and verify a lot of this. I spoke with a lot of folks. We actually had a great conversation with Harvard University, and they've banned vinyl in flooring that's outlined in their Harvard Healthier Building criteria that they have. I spoke to some designers. I spoke with Jose at CEH, great information. And as I said, they did some wonderful webinars. And that if you haven't seen those, please take a moment to watch them. They're fabulous. And so what did we do? We decided that we were only going to allow vinyl in maintenance and repair, and only if it was less than 40% of the total surface area of the project. And if it was more than 40%, they had to choose another option that couldn't be couldn't be vinyl tile. As for luxury vinyl tile, we allow them to have it, but we're requiring them to identify it in the price sheets. And then we also have language in here in the technical specifications that gives us the ability to restrict further and come up with requirements. So we're kind of hoping to do something in the fall to really come up with a standard and then look at what's on the contract, take off anything that doesn't have that standard. All right. So any questions so far?
I have a question just between the difference between luxury vinyl tile and regular PVC vinyl tile. Is there like what makes it different that it is something that you would allow or you wouldn't allow regular vinyl tile?
Do you want to take that, Alicia?
Yeah. So I was actually, as you were talking, Julie, I was thinking about how we, and I think there was somebody here from Washington State and how we addressed it. The older vinyl tile PVC is called VCT, vinyl composite tile, and that stuff is awful. And it has lead and it has high levels of phthalates and all kinds of other things. So one of the things I know when we were talking with Washington State is we said no VCT. Also, VCT requires constant like polish and stripping. So I think we put some information there like that it can't require polish and stripping because that was one of the biggest impacts other than the the PVC itself, which everybody knows, especially after the East Palestine, situation. LVT, luxury vinyl tile, obviously the luxury is just a way to, market it, but it doesn't require that. And there are certain products that have certifications that they're low phthalates and things like. So it seems like it's the best of the PVC, and it seems like that's where there's a lot of pushback to keep at least the LVT.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that when we talk about what are the pros and cons of LVT versus just getting rid of it. But VCT, an easy way to say it is like either go with the certification, which we'll talk about, or just say no VCT or no, no vinyl PVC flooring that requires strippers and polish and all that.
Yeah. And we had, one of the big, actually, Jose, please, you go first.
Oh, I was just going to follow up, but is this, kind of inclusion of luxury vinyl tile at the moment? Is that something that, I mean, I think you alluded to this, Julia, that you guys didn't really have the time, perhaps this roundabout of presenting perhaps enough evidence or just making the case for getting rid of PVC altogether. Is that something that maybe is on the to-do list for the next round?
Yeah, well, we tried to put the language in there to say, hey, we're going to be doing more research on this to try to make the case. And I actually have it on also our toxic reduction task force. We're dealing with quats right now, but I have it on the agenda to discuss with them about vinyl and PVC. But I think that there's a lot more that we need to do to kind of make the case, especially since it's such a high purchased item on the contract.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest things are the alternatives. And do they work? Are they cost, price, performance, availability, really? And so we have to make a little bit more of that case. So I thought this was sort of the best that we could do right now is to put restrictions and then to also keep it open that we can come up with more restrictions on the vinyl part, whether it's a ban or whether it's even restricting it more, right? So
right, absolutely, and I think that makes sense. Given the the time limit of everything, makes sense to kind of go for the, I guess, the best of the worst, if you want to call it that way. But yeah, certainly, in that process of developing the case for removing it altogether, I think that looking at alternatives is a good way. Looking at the regulation or the regulation trends, at the state level, perhaps even at the federal level, right, is another tool that you can have in your arsenal to kind of push against it, right? Yeah. Anyways, we'll continue that conversation offline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have
absolutely.
at the end, there's going to be
We have
opportunity
more conversation about this at the end because this was really the big issue that came up with us is the vinyl tile and the luxury vinyl tile. And Alicia talked about it right from the beginning. You're going to have this issue. You're going to have to, and then unfortunately we had a whole bunch of people leave at OSD and they sort of filled these positions, and they were in a rush to try and get this through. So we didn't have enough time to do the vetting and to do the discussions that we needed to do sort of the pros and cons and come up with what the specs would be for if we were to allow it, why, what we would allow. So we just put what we could get in there. So I'm going to actually turn it, unless there are other questions or comments, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia, and she's going to talk about the work that they did with us and the market assessment piece. And I know that we've talked a little bit, and especially when New York talked about the specs, there was, what came out was that the sort of market assessments on certain things, how important some of the market assessments are to validate, the third-party certification standards, whether you're requiring them, desiring them, or just having some type of disclosure, right? Or both, or a combination, right? So why don't I let you take it away?
Yeah, and the market assessments are really important, and we track them consistently to try to figure out where the market is. Are there enough products? Especially with third-party certifications, is there enough to require things? And I just wanted to say on this issue, we often will move things as far as we can, especially at a state level where there's thousands of buyers, and there's been huge pushback on the PVC. So as background for this contract, we conducted market assessments looking at what we like to look at the strongest third-party certifications first and figure out, are there enough products out there? And I also want to do a shout out to Mike Shade. I know he's been dealing with this issue with Home Depot and Lowe's and everything, and I don't think they got to 100% no PVC. I know they didn't, because you can see it's still in the store, but trying to move them in the direction of the safer, products. So in terms of the market assessments, we looked at multi-attribute standards and single attribute standards. In the past, I think we looked at, well, what's the single attribute, and put that as the minimum. And now we're trying to take this approach where we start from the top and see, are there enough if you just do multi? Do you need to move down? Do you do to single in order to get enough products? And where do things kind of come out in the market? So we looked at cradle to cradle, starting at silver or higher, the certification as well as the material health certificate. I'll talk about those. We looked at how many products are on Green Health approved, or at least how many brands. When you get to carpet, and we did this for carpet and flooring, but you get the numbers get very skewed on these market assessments, because some count a brand as one, and some count all the different configurations of that brand as 500. So you end up, so we counted brands typically, if there were any brands available. And then we also looked at the single attribute certifications. Typically low emitting is where people have started. So we went with looking at those, Floor Score, Indoor Advantage Gold, UL Green Guard Gold. And then we did a cross-check to try to see how many of these manufacturers are on the Massachusetts contract. So we could kind of see where that played out as well. Next slide. So then we also look at the standards themselves and compare them. And I think Shobha's on here. I dug even deeper into this, and they're looking at their carpet purchases right now as well. So she just gave me a thumbs up. So we really try to dig in. How did the different, even when there's multi-attributes, there may be differences. So how do they compare? And so we looked at Green Health Approved. I put this first because obviously they've been trendsetters, and I think there's the criteria they use is very easy to understand. There's five classes of chemicals that have to be eliminated in order to be acceptable to Healthcare Without Harm, Practice Green Health. I'm sure CEH was also has been involved with this as well. So it's formaldehyde, PFAS, PVC, antimicrobials, and all flame retardants. And Green Health reviews the information that's provided, it's a kind of in between. It's not a full-on certification in the way that, say, organizations like Green Seal go in and sometimes even go to the factory and they really dig deep, but they did look at the information that's provided by the manufacturers. As with a lot of these certifications, they will sometimes say, we won't disclose everything, but they do an NDA and they get deeper information than maybe you or I would get. So it's not officially a third-party certifier, but they do look at the information that's provided. It isn't just a disclosure. It's some kind of like a hybrid in between. They have 4 brands of flooring that's been certified by them. I'm calling it certified, approved by them, I guess. And Interface, Patch, Craft, and Shaw in the market assessment. And then one more was added after we did the assessment for Massachusetts, which was there. So those are 4 brands that are available, and that's what it covers. So next. Cradle to Cradle certified silver or higher. And I know a lot of you are familiar with these, but I'm just giving you a little bit of background. So one of the challenges with some of these third-party multi-attribute certifications is there's multiple versions. So right now they have products that are certified to 3.1 and 4.0, and then they just came out with a new 4.1. So like, which version are we talking about? It's also tiered: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And so you have to pick a tier as well as a version, which makes it complicated. There are also this is even much broader, because it's not just the toxics evaluation. There's 5 sustainability categories, things like energy and water and even social responsibility. And the tier that they get is whatever the lowest one achieves. And so the chemical restrictions come into the material health. And there also is a material health certificate. It's essentially the same as, the certificate is essentially the same as the criteria, except they don't do as rigorous of evaluation for the certificate as they do for the certification. And some of the chemical restrictions that they have, restrictions on organohalogens, so things, that have chlorine, like PVC, but also brominated products. They have a criteria on using optimized materials, restricting carcinogens, mutagens, reproductive toxins, and PBTs. And then they also restrict VOC emissions, certain certified low emitting per 1350. So we kind of look at it and we go, okay, how does this compare with that one? So if you did cradle to cradle at the silver or higher, you would essentially get all of these things, especially and they keep adding more chemicals to their later versions. So we found 6 brands that were certified. I just listed a few of them that people heard of. There's some other ones. Cradle to Cradle is more international, so some of the brands may not even be in the United States. And then they have, as I said, a separate list of products with material health certificates, essentially the same criteria, but not as rigorous of a verification process for that certificate. So Declare Red List Free is a health product declaration that, so Declare is the health product declaration. So some products will just be Declare, and then they would just disclose a whole lot of information. And we'll talk about how to use that information. Difficult for purchasers, maybe less difficult for, say, architects and things like that, which may, do a better job and be more prepared and suited to be able to go into an HPD and evaluate it. Ingredients must be disclosed at 100 parts per million. So then you get Declare Red List Free, which means that the manufacturer declares this product doesn't have any of the red list chemicals on it. Still declared. It's not necessarily confirmed by anybody. It's not certified. It's just declared, except if it has this little blue butterfly on it. That means that those particular products have been verified by the certifier. So some of them, so you have some that are just on the declare list and declared, some of them are declared red list free, some of them are declared red list free and certified. So again, you get that, confusion for purchasers as well. There are 52 brands of declare red list free. Not all of them are certified, but here, some of the brands like Forbo, Mannington Mills, et cetera. So, but there's additional products. So sometimes when we have third-party certifications, multi-attribute, if you add them all together, combine and say this or this or this, you can end up with quite a few products, and that could be enough. And especially if you're a city or you want a really strong standard, you can say, this is what we want, and it has to be this there. So one thing about the Declare Red List Free standard is it has a lot of chemicals now, over 12,500 chemicals in lots of different categories. And so I listed them here, things like asbestos and certain, they have individual classes of chemicals, but then they also reference certain lists, and they also have certain attributes. Can't be a carcinogen, mutagen, reproductive toxin. Obviously, you need to dive in deeper. Well, what lists of carcinogens are they using? Usually, most of the standards are using globally harmonized lists of chemicals, which are not as strong as, say, Prop 65 typically. They also reference this. Now, for a purchaser, they're not going to be able to look at all these lists and try to figure out which things. So this is a really, especially if it is declared red list free, that means that the certifier here did the work of cross-checking what the manufacturer said on their disclosure versus comparing it to their red list and said, yes, it is red list free, especially if it has that butterfly. You can see PFAS is on here, toxic heavy metals, etc. Next slide. So that was the end of talking about the attribute certifications that we typically look at for flooring. There also are single attribute certifications. So some and many entities have just said, okay, the minimum is it needs to be low emitting, which means it doesn't emit chemicals after a certain amount of time and certain types of chemicals. Typically people, are using 1350, California's 1350, low VOC standard. That's what's referenced in LEED, et cetera. So you can see, so the two that we looked at here, SCS Floor Score and UL Green Guard Gold, they typically have lots more brands. So you can see it opens it up to so many more products if you allow just certified low emitting. And I think it's been a problem that LEED did this. They essentially give credit for low emitting, almost the same amount of credit as they give for the multi-attribute third-party certifications. And I've argued against this for so many years at the USGBC, but LEED recognizes typically, if the product is low emitting. So this is the temptation, is to say, okay, in addition to these, we would also allow that in addition to the multi-attribute, we would also allow the single attribute. It gives you so many more products, but it doesn't give you all the other stuff, the PVC, the PFAS, and everything else. Now, what has come up on the issue of LVT, because we've seen tons of pushback in government agencies, don't take away our LVT. And so, we like it. It's waterproof. It lasts longer. It's less expensive. It's easier to install, all kinds of different things. And so there's like a wave of LVT that's been going on, not only in government, but also residential construction. And so there is an industry-based standard that is low phthalate, restricts to 1,000 parts per million. And we ended up looking at that after we did the initial assessment because the LVT issue came up. Originally, we were just saying, don't allow PVC, but this is another way that you can at least get to one of the big issues is which is the phthalates, which can migrate from the PVC. So next slide. You heard earlier the safer alternatives to PVC. There are a lot of them, but they may be more expensive. They may be limited. They may have some performance issues. So I agree with doing an alternatives assessment on all these would be fantastic to just, and things are changing. More and more products are coming out, especially in the area of other plastic polymers that are not PVC, but can be somewhat like PVC. Next slide. We did a similar project for the clean water agencies, and we try to really simplify our specs. So we just said, this was more of an encouragement. Ask the vendors for one of those three: Green Health approved, Cradle certified, declare red list free, avoid products with PVC, especially ones that or anything that requires floor polish and strippers, to get rid of those health effects. And we ended up, because again, there was a lot of pushback. If absolutely PVC flooring cannot be avoided, then consider LVT, that is Assure certified. We debated a lot whether to put that last bullet in, but that's what we ended up, doing, recognizing that LVT is being used quite a lot.
Yeah.
And a shout out to CEH for all the great, research and information they have and tools on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
So,
thank you.
Oh, you do. Did you want to?
Do you want me to do this one? I can probably.
Well, I'll
do
start
this.
and then I'll hand it back to you. So
Okay.
I just say we're grateful. We are under contract to NASPO, the National Association of State Procurement Officials. Many states may not know this. If every state gives money into NASPO, and then they have training and technical support money that they can use. So if your state hasn't used your money and you want to do a project on sustainable procurement, you let me know, and we can specifically do a project using that money. We just have to come up with a proposal, and if you have money in your budget, they will pay us directly for that work. So happy to talk to anybody about additional projects.
And this is something I've always tried to let other states know about, because, there are a number, like Mass DEP couldn't apply for this funding, right? They'd have to work with us, even though they might have specification stuff that they want to work on. They'd have to work with us. We'd have to put a proposal together, get our, CPO or the head of our agency to agree that we want to ask for that money, and then that proposal goes to NASPO. So I'm just, for any states here or any other communities, if you want to work with your state procurement program, reach out to them, because there might be projects that they want to do that you could partner with them on, and they could get funding through NASPO. And I just wanted to also let you guys know, any states out there, that all NASPO state members, they can also receive a membership to SPLC. I don't know if you're aware, but that is now, they signed an MOU with the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council. So you can actually get a membership, and it's paid for by NASPO. So I just want to throw those things out there, just in case folks don't know. Okay. So now we thought, we have, 20 minutes, and we have a couple of discussion topics here. We started to talk a little bit more about PVC, but we thought we'd sort of open it up and have a little bit more of an in-depth discussion about, PVC free versus phthalate free PVC flooring. And I think, Alicia sort of alluded to it, and I did too, that we get a lot of pushback from not only the industry, and that's one thing, but also from a lot of buyers. They are looking for this, right? And so it's trying to navigate that path on how do we educate, how do we find alternatives, and how do we sort of use the tool of our specifications to kind of start narrowing this with PVC.
And we're not seeing it on carpet. Interestingly, people are able to do PVC-free carpet with no problem. It's really that LVT flooring.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the PVC flooring, the pros, cons, they're, it's, I mean, there are alternatives. We've been told and it's more industry folks, and I'm trying to have it uh, uh, sort of truthed by the actual installers and by like Harvard University. I asked, does it cost more? Do alternatives to PVC cost more? And they were not aware that it cost a lot more. The industry was saying that it costs a lot more, right? So we're getting kind of these two things coming at us, and we have to really figure out what's really going on. So, but we were told by industry that it's, there's less maintenance, it's cheaper to install, and it lasts longer. That's what the industry told us on a call, that it lasts a lot longer. And then, of course, some of the cons, of course, that we've been talking about, is really thinking about the life cycle of the PVC products. And if you participated in the CEH webinars, it really walks you through kind of that whole life cycle from manufacturing this material to actually installing it to disposal, and that there are real considerations at all of those different points. Hi, Bobby.
Hey, sorry, I've been off camera, but I have to say that when efforts were made to just address phthalates in PVC flooring, I was concerned that this exact thing was going to happen, because PVC is so problematic. Like the chemicals that were spilled in the East Palestine accident are not different between LVT and traditional PVC. I really see LVT as just slightly different material thicknesses and maybe presentation, but it's the exact same thing. I mean, maybe the phthalates being different, but that's like such a tiny part of the whole piece. And so I think it's frustrating for me to see this sort of distinction being made, because I think it's a distinction without a meaning in terms of going PVC free but still allowing luxury vinyl tile. I don't think that's I think that's a misrepresentation of the material restriction. So if you have a restriction on PVC, LVT shouldn't make the cut. Vinyl chloride is still a known carcinogen. The materials need, as you were talking about with the life cycle, all of those are the same between PVC flooring and like traditional sheet PVC and LVT. And I see it, I mean, as a consumer, I see it advertised on, HGTV is now talking about LVT all over the place and how great it is. And I think it's just been one of the most successful rebrandings that the vinyl industry has done to convince people that somehow this is better than the last version. And I recognize that it's a real challenge to reckon with how you avoid PVC and what alternatives are out there, marmoleum. I'm sure you've looked at those, but I just think it's really important not to overstate what you're doing and not to make a distinction. I recognize that the use of LVT, if it has lower maintenance requirements, may be valuable and relevant to the commercial space, but I would hate to represent that it was less toxic in its entirety, because I don't think it really ends up being that way. So I'm, yeah, that's my
free, which that's sort of the distinction that we made. But right, I hear you.
I just think that, I mean, I would say that I've been concerned about our collective, as you know, I'm coming from the advocacy side, our advocacy over phthalates and vinyl is sort of something that people could wrap their brains around, because I think it undersells the toxicity of the entire product.
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of people don't know that when you say to people, oh, do you know that train wreck? And you show the pictures of all the black smoke and everything. People are not making necessarily that, connection. And so, with Massachusetts, you're trying to encourage these other things, and you're trying to make, okay, if we have to have this, what's the safest, knowing that it's not safe. It's not, it's maybe preferable because maybe it doesn't have lead, maybe it's low emitting, maybe it's, doesn't it, and I wouldn't even call it phthalate free because it's still 1,000 parts per million. There's still some, so how do you move the market, and how do you communicate to people that it really is a last resort? Try these other things, and maybe it's through some education, or maybe this life cycle, alternatives assessment, Julia, that you're talking about, to try to get that information out.
Yeah.
See, Jose
No,
has
really
his
great
hand up.
points. Yeah, Jose.
Yeah, no, I have to echo what Bobby was saying, and Alicia as well. I mean, that it would be certainly a misrepresentation to say that, phthalate free or luxury vinyl tile, for example, right, with all the restrictions it has, is less harmful to human health, because it isn't, right? You may be trading off exposure during, the workplace, for example, from off-gassing, but you still have the manufacturing side of it, right? That's exposing communities, oftentimes low income and minority communities, right? And then at the same time, once those floors have gone through their life cycle and make their way to, a landfill or God forbid, an incinerator, then you have the exact same thing, perhaps even worse, right? So we cannot represent any form of PVC as more environmentally friendly or preferable in that sense, because we are doing a disservice to those communities, right? But I having said that, I understand, what was done here, with the goal, right, of ultimately moving to a PVC free state, right? And so I think we're all in agreement that that's where we want to be, and we want to continue working, right, to get to that place, hopefully soon.
Yeah, and absolutely. And that's always, for all of us procurement folks, right? That's always that, like, how do we get there? Right? The buyers are asking for this stuff, right? And what are the alternatives? And do we have good enough alternatives that are cost the same, and doing all that life cycle stuff? And without all that information, we can't necessarily ban it, right?
It
Absolutely.
reminds me of the lighting, we pushed for so many years. So like, get the mercury down, get it, and then things just flipped. And I feel like, it's such a hard thing, because I'd love to just say PVC free, don't use PVC, avoid it, restrict it completely. It's really hard when you're talking about, so much interest. I think it's our job to really not only take on these environmental issues and really make people understand, and also the microplastics and anything else that's in there. And at the same time, push it to be, no lead, no heavy metals, no this, no that, and just try to, make them reformulate until we can, and try to promote the alternatives, as much as possible. And it is possible to take PVC free. There are other alternatives. I mean,
Right.
it is. It's just hard at a state level, when you have so many buyers, to get there and convince them because a lot of times the purchasers can just go around the contract. They'll just do something else.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the other huge issue is that there's a lot of replacements of pieces, right? And this is a huge cost to ask somebody, oh, nope, we're just going to ban it, and you can't make any replacements, right? So that was sort of something that came up too, that, I sort of scratched my head, like, I don't know what the right thing to do is, but we tried to come up with that language about 40% just to have something in there, right? But that is a real issue.
And just to circle back, Julia,
Yeah.
to the conversation of alternatives, right? I think that's why CEH devoted a full webinar on flooring alternatives, and we connected with a couple very promising manufacturers who were referred to us essentially by the Healthy Materials Lab. So I cannot kind of emphasize or recommend the work that the Healthy Materials Lab does on this particular issue, looking at alternatives, vetting them for their sustainability, for the different sustainability factors that they have, and then interacting directly with these manufacturers, right, to get them to understand what materials they should be focusing on, and also having in mind the idea of cost, right? Because for purchasers, that's kind of top of the line, right? And those alternatives are moving. It's slow, certainly, but the two manufacturers that we spoke with, Wineo and Duracell, had alternatives to PVC in different forms that were somewhat cost comparable, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the idea of achieving that, but in a mass macro level, I think is where we want to be. But it falls on us too, right, to be able to promote these alternatives, to engage these manufacturers who are creating alternatives, ensuring that they are viable alternatives from a non-toxic standpoint, and then connecting them with purchasers like you guys, for example, right? So
and I wish we had some kind of grant program where we could get purchasers to help them with defray any costs or whatever, and to kind of install this stuff, right? Install the alternatives, but we don't have that grant program. But I think too, the other thing that we heard from the industry was that installation was a lot cheaper than the other alternatives. I don't know if that's true. That's another thing that I'm like, all right, we got to sort of figure that piece out. So I did ask my colleague at Harvard. I asked a designer who, and both of them did not think that it was a lot cheaper, the labor, but industry was saying that loudly. So, that's the type of thing that we have to sort of get. What are the facts about that, right? Because industries are going to go to the schools and say, oh my God, this is going to be so much cheaper for you. It's going to last a lot longer. It's so easy to clean, right? And schools go, I don't have that much money to put stuff down, and are choosing this, right? So it's tough.
And Julia, last thing I'll say. I mean, you mentioned industry. It's so discouraging, I guess, to see the amount of effort that the plastic, and PVC industry is putting into this. Just to give you an example, not too long ago, I was working with representatives from the the Business and Institutional Furniture Manufacturers Association. It's a mouthful, BIFMA, and so they have a sustainability sort of certification program of their own as well, and it was going through an update process. And for a number of years, it has had a sort of a credit that is very popular that bans PVC, right? In any way, form, or in any form. And so there were representatives of the PVC industry in these conversations of how is this sustainability certification going to be updated. And they were arguing that, oh, it's not bad. A lot of the things are exaggerated, blah, 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 blah. And, seeing that at that level does not, it doesn't, it doesn't fill me with confidence, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that we have such a boisterous, opposition in this case. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe people can just, I know we have two other slides for discussion, and I'm wondering if people, obviously CH has a lot of information on this, but if there's, if there's a resource list that we could put forth on what are the, pros and cons of each of these approaches, then that would be, we can keep the conversation going there.
Yeah,
And I know
absolutely.
we're going to be looking at this in New York
Yeah.
to see Pam there.
Yeah. Hey, Pam.
I just wanted to ask the BIFMA meeting that you were talking about, have they already updated their standards and altered how they view PVC?
So
Or
the
is that
standard
in
has been
process?
yeah, the standard has been completed. I'm not sure that it has been published just yet. If not, it'll be very soon. But we were able to kind of push back against the PVC industry, and it'll remain as it was before. So
Oh,
no
good.
change.
Okay.
Is that
No PVC allowed
7.4.4
with that
one?
particular credit.
That's
Sorry, Alicia, what's that?
That's 7.4.4.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Yeah, and the I, I think one of the important things is that we are represented on these committees, and that's what's so hard. I sometimes don't have time,
Me
but I
either.
know how important it is for us to be represented there, providing that voice, right? So,
And that could
yeah,
be a project, that a state funds through NASPO to, represent the state voices on some of these certification discussions. I do the cleaning products, and it's hard. It's a lot of
yeah,
work.
it's a lot. I did a whole bunch of EP ones. It was hard. Um, okay, we only have like a couple of more minutes. So maybe, I don't know if I think I sort of talked about disclosure versus requirements, but there's sort of just different ways that you can structure this. And I think the disclosure piece is getting more play nowadays. It's getting a lot more recognition for having disclosures, because that makes the vendors have to know what third-party certifications and standards these products have. So I think it's an important piece.
Can I just say, like, the differences so people know, like an EPD, environmental product declaration, typically a lot of times used now for climate information. It will often tell you the material, so it may tell you if it has PVC in it. Whereas like the health product declaration typically has a lot of chemical disclosures on what is the actual material made of, really broken down. I think they're good, but I don't think that for purchasing, I don't think that they're a substitute, because purchasers don't know how to use them. They're very difficult. They're not often regulated. And it's really just a lot easier to say it has to have one of these certifications and let the certifiers do the work of sorting through. But it can be a good backup to, to just look if you're looking for a specific chemical, or you're trying to see if it does have PVC or what it's made of. That can be useful.
Yeah, and I think that we're starting to include them as much as we can in our bids, and it's just for informational purposes only, and it's for the buyers, so that if they want to dig deeper, they have access, whereas before they didn't have access without going directly to the vendor and just asking. So, okay, any other thoughts on this? No.
I guess I'll just add, disclosure is, even of all this stuff, like just disclosing whether something has a third party certification. I don't know, I really think there should be at least some minimum. I'd rather have, a broader range of things than just disclosing if it has a third party certification, as opposed to requiring whether it does or not.
Yeah.
Just to, disclosure is great to compare two things, but I still think there should be a floor.
Mm-hmm. As much as you can. Yep,
A floor for
absolutely.
flooring.
A floor for flooring. And I think we sort of talked a little bit about the EPDs and HPDs. We just had that conversation. So we are at time. I was hoping there would be a little more time. Um, but, yeah. So this is, so anyways, we really thank you guys for having us and allowing us to talk about this. And I hope that we've provided some interesting, thought-provoking information and perhaps some model specs that you can use. And I hope that we can continue the discussion on vinyl, because that is a really, like, how are people dealing with this, right? And how do you navigate? And is there something that we can do together to, really advocate, sort of having a common voice about the fact, oh, we want to ban this soon, but we just have to figure out how to do it, right? Like getting the message, we want to ban it, we just got to figure out how to do it, right? Great. All right. Any other thoughts? Thank you. Well, thanks, Sue. All right, you all. So if anybody's interested in sharing this, send me a message and we can hop on a call together. Okay.
Thank you. And if anyone
Thank
wants to
you,
do a
Alicia.
project, feel free to call me if you're interested in doing a green purchasing project through NASPO. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.